Well, hello. This is Jeff Gaudiosi, and you're on MisplacedStraws.com, where music comes to life. My guest today is making his third trip to the site. And since we last spoke, he's become a best-selling author with his book, A Genesis in My Bed, and released one of last year's best live records that commemorated his tour celebrating the classic record Selling England by the Pound. But on January 22nd, he'll release his 26th solo record, a gorgeous, classically based album called Under a Mediterranean Sky. Please welcome back Mr. Steve Hackett. Welcome, Steve.
Hi there, Jeff. Nice to talk to you again, and thank you for that lovely introduction.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about with this record, but before we get too deep into the themes of it, throughout your solo career, you've always kind of turned to this classical nylon string guitar compositions every few years. What is it about that type of music that keeps drawing you back?
It's probably, once every few years. Usually there's 10 years between these albums.
Mm-hmm.
That's what tends to happen. I meanwhile, get on with things that are perhaps more commercial and saleable and all that. But time and time again, I'm drawn back to it. I guess I have to go back to the early years of when I was listening to music in my teens, and I was listening to rock and roll and pop and R&B, all that kind of stuff. And then I heard Segovia plays Bach, and I was blown away from the first note. I thought, my God, how is this possible on one guitar in one go? How does anyone get up to that standard? And for many years I resisted playing with the fingers. I tried to be a plectrum player, but then I thought, you can't play a lot of this stuff. You can't access those different parts unless you're using the right hand to full capacity. So reluctantly I became a convert to using the nails, and I thought, first of all, maybe it's a bit unmanly. It's a bit like, real men don't knit or something like that. All these crazy ideas that I had as a young guy. And then I thought, well, actually, if you get the nails tough enough, they can act like talons on the axe. And I've never really looked back. I love that music. I can't help loving classical music. It was a guilty pleasure at first, and now, of course, I'm out of the closet with it. I've done so many albums of this kind of stuff, as well as the rock stuff, of course.
So do you regularly write on nylon, or is it just, and then once you've compiled enough, you put a record out, or is it something where you sit and say, like, okay, it's kind of a palate cleanse, I'm going to write a full classical record now?
I can't really work out how it happens. This stuff really gets me up in the middle of the night, and when I've been playing for several hours and I've given up on something, then other ideas start to kick in. I think, oh yeah, you could change that phrase, you could have this, you could have that. And a lot of it I don't write down at first. It's finger exercises and moves, and I've got to live with it and love it first of all before I'm going to commit it either to paper or to recording. I wish I could throw more light on it. It comes bit by bit. It doesn't happen chronologically. You don't get it all in one go. It's a big mystery to me how any music gets written at all. All I know is that if you keep practicing long enough, you will do things that will surprise yourself.
And the record itself, Under a Mediterranean Sky, it's sort of a conceptual record in that each piece reflects a certain destination. Talk a little bit about how you came up with the idea of having the music reflect geography.
My wife and I, Jo is in her time. She's been a writer, a filmmaker, many things, and she comes up with musical ideas that are really, really great as well. It's normally top line ideas, but I hear them, and so she has quite a bit of input on this stuff, and she's always keen on variations of things. But we were kicking around the idea of music that had a theme to it, and she was always keen on me using some kind of story. Before that, I was writing a lot of songs and vaguing out on them and finding out if I'd written some lyrics. I'll find out what it's all about later. I let the words lead me. But she comes at it from the other perspective of saying, well, if you have a story or a concept, it will stretch you into areas that you won't necessarily normally do. And she said, I think with your next acoustic effort, you should try and change it and not just stick with stuff that's either just, sort of mid-19th century romantic and Baroque influences, but what about the aspect of world music and different regions and places that we've visited and been affected by that? And some of that stuff has permeated the rock albums I've done, particularly in recent years. And we thought we'd try and do the same thing with an acoustic album, a so-called acoustic album, but how to stretch the boundaries of an acoustic album and make it as orchestral as possible, so that you've got the question and answer thing. And I think you used the term palette cleanser. It's a little bit like we tend to have one orchestral track with guitar, and then we have one that's just guitar. The self-orchestrating idea of that, and so it's sort of big picture, small picture, big picture, small picture, to try and give the thing pace and use some instruments that I would never normally think of using on an acoustic album, like the Arabian oud, the Arabian lute, this thing that I'm very bad at playing, but I can manage a few phrases on it. I love the sound of it, and we had the duduk, the Armenian duduk, the tar from Azerbaijan. We had some soprano sax, and back to the idea of flute and two flutes at times, plus the incredible string work of Christine Townsend, playing both violin and viola. So I guess, we had a small team on this one, but it doesn't sound like a small team. It sounds like a big wide canvas, and of course, the Mediterranean as a dream. It's the place you want to go to for your holiday when you go up in cold climes like we did. The chance to go somewhere where the sky is blue and the colours are golden. The challenge was to get that across with music, try and paint picture, and the fact that no one can really travel at this point in time with complete certainty. In a way, it's another way of traveling, I guess. It's the album's a kind of travelogue or journey, and so I'm very proud of it for what it does. It takes me places. I think that's part of the beauty, just kind of music in general, but in this record particularly, is this one is meant to just kind of sit back, and you said a lot in that last answer in terms of sort of the ebb and flow of the record, from the orchestral pieces that bring in a lot of these other instruments, then it's down to just your guitar and back. I think the combination of some of those world instruments mixed with the traditional sax and flute really make it something special. And I'm glad you mentioned Christine Townsend. I think her violin on The Memory of Myth just grabbed you the second you heard it. So I think, kind of the combination of all those different instruments really make this a unique piece. Well, I particularly like that one, and that's a track that my wife Jo had a big hand in. She basically came up with the melody that Christine plays at the beginning, and then you've got the input of Roger King, who came up with the chord work and the orchestral arrangement that takes that melody onto an extraordinarily sublime plane, as far as I'm concerned. And the track also has this slightly hazy and impressionistic quality, an unfinished quality that Joe liked a lot when I was just fooling around with the guitar in a certain tuning, and I was playing stuff that was a little bit like folk music and a little bit like Eastern scales. She very much likes that area, and then we had the Peruvian charango, which kicks in at one point, which I was using like a mandolin or like a bouzouki to give it, a complete Greek context. But and in a way, I always thought of it as an unfinished piece, and I didn't think that she would like it the way we did it. But she said she absolutely loved it the way it was, and she didn't want it taken to a full-blown portrait. There are moments on it that are deliberately sketchy, and then other moments when the full thing kicks in, and the full emotion of that. And I think it's a brilliant melody that I had nothing whatsoever to do with, other than trying to play sympathetically along with it once the strings had their say on it, and it's got this extraordinary severity to it. And you think a severe melody wouldn't really be engaging, but it's got that sort of mysterious minor thing about it. It reminds me a little bit of some of the stuff that I've heard from Grieg, sort of elemental quality that he has with the classical music. That the most famous piece of which is Hall of the Mountain King, of course. But that itself has this elemental quality, and a lot of the stuff that he wrote has, and I think, funnily enough, that particular track, Memory of Myth, has those aspects. So we listen to classical music a lot.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful piece. It definitely, my first listen through the record, that was the one that caught my attention. But,
interesting, yeah.
And we're still a long way away from ever kind of getting back to normal and touring and things like that. But at some point, do you ever see yourself, even if it's a one-off kind of thing, working with an orchestra to bring these songs and some of the other acoustic pieces to life?
I have played some of these pieces live, not normally with an orchestra. I mean, I have played nylon guitar with orchestra live sometimes, not very often, because the logistics, as I'm sure you can imagine, of showing up with an orchestra are not as easy as saying, well, we can figure it out with a small team. It's a group. It's a different thing, but sometimes we can conjure that with smaller forces. I would never say never, but what I try to do with these types of albums is to free myself up and say, I never feel that I have complete need to play pieces that are this subtle in front of an audience and put them through that. I think that, many times I'll do this, and I might just play these melodies just once in order to get them up to a standard for a record, and for people to, how can I put it? If they're affected by it, you get taken by it, then wonderful. The idea of live performance, of course. In the past, I've concentrated more on safe bets, where, particularly in recent years, by bringing back a lot of the really early Genesis music in front of audiences, some of which have never heard that stuff or weren't really aware that Peter Gabriel was the lead singer, years before Phil Collins took over on vocals. So it's a difficult choice. It's an embarrassment of riches and possibilities live, but I do try and keep people happy. So the idea of to go out with Seconds Out in its entirety, and probably a more fleshed out version even than the double album that came from it in 1977. So
and that'll still be on the books whenever we get up and running again?
Sorry, what was that?
That the Second Out tour will still be something that happens whenever we get up and running again?
Yeah, whenever we're up and running, whenever the world is open for business again, we'll be open for business. Officially, we're supposed to be there in April. Whether that'll happen or not, I don't know. All I can say is that things have been scheduled and rescheduled, and maybe again. We don't know with any certainty, because there is no certainty that accompanies this pandemic, except that we hope that everyone will stay safe and not be too suspicious of vaccines.
Yes.
And because without vaccines, I mean, what hope is there for the world? We have to do that, and I'm hoping to get back to some sense of some semblance of normality, and meanwhile, it's nice to be able to record this kind of stuff. That's a passion for me.
And 2021 is actually kind of a milestone year for you. First of all, we have this new record, Under a Mediterranean Sky, out January 22nd. But right after that, this month is also the 50th anniversary of your joining and playing your first gig with Genesis. I believe it was at the Lyceum in London. Is there anything you remember about taking the stage at that first show?
I think for me as a young player, I was very nervous. We did this tour that had rock bottom prices. Some people remember it as 6 shillings in old money, or 10 shillings in old money, we did these gigs at rock bottom prices. 3 acts were on playing together from the Charisma Records Genesis label at the time. Genesis was just one of the bands, the Van de Graaff Generator, Lindisfarne, and we were the opening act for the opening act. We went on first, Lindisfarne second, Van de Graaff last, and a lot of Genesis music at that time was very subtle, a lot of acoustic guitars, 12-string guitars and all of that, and so we didn't have the bluster to be able to really, grab an audience by the balls. We didn't have that at that stage. That came later, I think. You might say, thank heavens for mellotrons and bass pedals and synthesizers and all the rest. But when I first joined the band, it was. We had a bunch of guitars, we had organ, a bit of electric piano, and a singer who stood up and played a bass drum with his foot at the same time as he hit a tambourine and sang into a microphone, and that was the show at that time. No light show, none of that. Different days, but a pleasant memory.
And that sort of quickly changed. I mean, that first show 50 years ago this month was sort of the end of the Trespass tour, and then we'll also be celebrating the 50th anniversary a little later this year of your first record, Nursery Crime, which did kind of bring in more of those bells and whistles. I mean, the world's introduction to your playing is that classic opening track, The Musical Box. Did that freedom to experiment with sound, something that kind of stuck with you through your career, I mean, did you kind of know that it was going to lead the band to bigger things and when you joined coming off of Trespass?
No, I think, talking to pals who were in bands at the same time, roughly, who were doing stuff that was for the audience, myself included, earth-shattering stuff that I would be checking out. And I don't think young bands have any idea of the staying power of those ideas and those early experiments. So most of the time, you're just hoping that people show up at shows. And you hope that your recording contract is going to get renewed. And I think ambitions in music are very separate to that, unless you happen to spring onto the scene fully formed and all the girls love you. But it wasn't really like that for us. So we didn't have that degree of certainty. And social media was non-existent at that time. There were no videos. You just had to win people over in clubs and colleges, first of all, and maybe you got to play the occasional town hall, and it was all very much on a wing and a prayer.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seemed to work out. That's a good thing.
It did work out, yes, but when you're in the thick of it, it seems to be going very slowly, and sometimes you can get extremely exhausted and think that I don't really believe this is going to go quite the way that I would like it to. So, you have to have your helmet on, really, and you've got to tough it out, really. Yeah. I think any young band out there, any young artist, there's something about sticking by your guns. It's a funny thing. It's not easy to do, but to be able to carry through the strength of ideas and not be put off by your detractors. Do you know what I mean? It can be damn difficult to realize that you're doing anything of value.
Mm-hmm. Well, and kind of bringing things back to today. This record is coming out. We're all still home. Are you still writing? Do you have maybe another project in mind, depending on how long this all lasts? Or just kind of seeing what happens?
Well, the funny thing is, I was about 45 minutes into a new album. Mm-hmm. And I thought I might go back and redo some things, but then ever since the pandemic got so infectious that the lockdown is such that people are being advised just not to go out at all. Mm-hmm. It's developed a kind of mutation, and we just heard the figures today that 1 in 50 people in the UK have got this virus. My cousin and his wife have it, and it's a life-threatening disease. Just because presidents and prime ministers catch it and seem to get over it, it seems to me that they probably got the best treatment on hand.
I would think, yeah.
I would think, best interest in keeping. The hive is not going to thrive if you lose the leader. Yeah. Anyway, funny enough, it was a weird thing. I was looking for a quote that I just read today. Funny enough, it's from Winston Churchill, and it was talking about this thing about success and how you view it. And he said, success is going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm, which I thought was incredibly dogged and kind of bulldog Drummond about it, So you asked me about this thing about the what I was going to do next. So I've got a rock album, but now, because I've got this much more time, I'm finding that I'm writing more things like Under a Mediterranean Sky. And that was all recorded in 2 months. Earlier, around about March, I think I started last year. In 2 months, it was done. And considering the size of some of the arrangements on it, from scratch, I don't think it's bad.
Yeah, I mean, some of those soundscapes.
Yeah, I guess if it takes off in a big way, which would be wonderful. But I don't do that kind of album in order to have a big success with it. And as I say, it's that kind of it's non-competitive stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. I have enthusiasm for the form of it, for that type of music, but no way is it going to make a dent on the Billboard top 100. I can't see it. Well, maybe it will. Who knows?
Well, like I say, it's a beautiful album. I think I read that you'd said once before. It's great to kind of sit back with a glass of wine, close your eyes, listen to this, and just take a trip through all of these destinations.
That's really how I see it. I see people just drifting off to it. If they like it, it'll be, oh, what's that in the background going on?
Right.
Yeah, the idea of someone's mother hearing it, or someone's wife who doesn't normally like the rock and roll that the husband or son plays, and it's like, oh, that sounds interesting. Romantic music and exotic stuff, and filmic. Lots of film music has been a big influence, but then film music has been influenced by classical music for
forever. Yeah.
For forever, where would Platoon be without Samuel Barber's work? And he's pretty contemporary in terms of classical composers. It's within living memory for some of us. Yeah.
We've been spending some time today with the amazing Steve Hackett, who is about to put out his new record on January 22nd, an acoustic piece called Under Mediterranean Sky. And Steve, thank you so much for taking some time to talk about it today. Always enjoy talking with you. And I said, this is a great record. I really hope people check it out. It seems like it's getting some really good reviews out there, so hopefully it'll get on the radar of people who may not normally listen to this type of music.
That's it, yes. Well, I just read a whole bunch of French reviews, and I'm very surprised, because I only ever get to play Paris these days. But the French seem to have gone overboard on it, and so I'm really pleased that, some of the reviews are far better than I expected them to be. It seems like people have really listened to it, so I hope that it makes. I hope that it means as much to others as it's meant to me.
And again, it'll be available everywhere January 22nd. I know you have some signed copies online, some vinyl, things like that. So, Steve, best of luck. Stay safe, stay healthy, and
thank you.
Hopefully we can catch you on the road at some time in the future.
Indeed. Thank you, Jeff. Lovely to talk again. All the best to you.
You as well. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.